up on that. The next campaign that we ran was a warp speed campaign. So we wanted to do this idea of saying, you know, we're going to get through this drive at warp speed as quickly as we can. So we made a commitment to our listeners that we were going to start the drive, and as soon as we raised the money that we wanted to raise in that drive, we would end the drive, and that's what we did. We ended 4 days early, actually. So we just kind of went through, and we really had a lot of fun. And this is like a great example of how you really use social media to your advantage in this situation. So we just kind of said, hey, let's have some fun with what we would do. So we kind of went out there, took some Star Trek type images. This one, Prime Directive, support GPD at warp speed. And then my favorite, if anybody likes Spaceballs, which is like one of my favorite childhood movies, I insisted that we go to Plaid on the last day. So on the final day of the campaign, we posted this. We've met our goal. We've gone to Plaid. We actually wore Plaid. We Facebook Lived it. It was a lot of fun. Outside of those kinds of things, we also create a lot of beautiful artwork for some of the other things we're doing at GPD. This is a poster. This is one of the newest things we've done, actually, for Chemistry Matters. You may have seen it on one of the light-up billboards when you came in today. And we're going to talk more about Chemistry Matters later in today's program, but that's a beautiful piece. I'm really partial to this one, and it's kind of one of my winning moments at GPB because I went to Taya and said, we have this great opportunity to be in, we have this really great opportunity to be in Atlanta magazine. So we want a full page piece that we want to do that represents GPB, and I kind of want to go Jackson Pollock with it, and I want to do something really wild. And so we kind of brought this concept to her, which she was in the beginning kind of like, I don't know.
Well, first of all, it's not Jackson Pollock.
Well, it's not, no.
So that was my first problem.
Well, so we can't go all the way Jackson Pollock, but we can certainly go there. So we started kind of playing around with this idea. Eventually, we warmed her up. We put it in the magazine, and now it's hanging bigger than Dallas on her wall in her own. So I know that we did something good for in that situation. And then this is just a lovely piece. If you've seen First Family from Planes, which is a GPD original, it was a conversation with Judy Woodruff with the President and the First Lady. And this is such, I just found this to be such a beautiful representation of these two people, like the use of the pastels and really going into the whole look. So as you can see, sort of all around the gauntlet, there's so much more I could show you. But I just wanted you to have a sampling of how we, think very thoughtfully and seriously about how we represent ourselves in the community here at GPB. And we have a lot of fun doing it too. So we have a team of 4 designers, and Mark Radway is our design director. I usually tap him for all the stuff you see out in the lobby and everything because his aesthetic is just really on point with that kind of thing. So, any questions?
We're often asked who our ad agency is or who is our design ad agency. It's all done in-house. First of all, we don't have the money to go out of house, but second of all, they are some of the most creative people I've ever worked with. So that's just, the work is terrific.
Bert, it's unfortunate that you don't bring any enthusiasm.
Right.
But congratulations.
Bert, do you want to talk about the percentage raise you've had, the 30%?
30.
Is it 30?
Are you talking about, for our sustainers?
Yeah.
So,
You do it personally.
yeah, I was like, what? So yeah, we're at a really great place here at GPD when it comes to our members and our sustainers. So right now we have 62,000 members at Georgia Public Broadcasting. At the end of 2013, we had about 40,000 members. So that's a 50% increase in 2 years. And in that time, we started at the end of 2013 with about 8% sustainers on file, so people who give on a monthly basis. We've increased that to 22% now. So the goal in the next year with all the initiatives that we've put in place with the development operation is to get to a third sustainers. So this time next year I want to be able to say to you that we have 33% sustainers here at GPB, which I think is a good, healthy representation of people who are supporting this on a monthly basis.
And the percentage of sustainers that stay?
So the majority of the percent, this is amazing. So we've talked about the canvassing program before, and the fact that we have people who are going door to door, and sometimes it's surprising to people that people make gifts door to door like that. In fact, last week we had a $3,000 gift for a canvasser. And so it happens, it really does. And so what we found is the canvassing donors who come in as sustainers, first of all, GPB is one of about 14 stations canvassing in the U.S., and we have the highest percentage of donors who come in as sustainers out of all those stations across the U.S. So what happens is the sustaining rate of those sustainers is literally in the 90s. It's like about 90% of those sustainers retain from year to the next year.
Year to year. And that's what we judge it on. Craig, you asked us 2 years ago what really matters is the year to year. We're at about 90%.
Yeah, it's a minimum.
Our third year into it.
So what that
That
does
was
is,
good.
and it boosts our overall sustainer rate altogether. And so we retain sustainers around 85%. So if you sign up as a sustainer, there's about an 85% chance you're going to sign up for next year. And it's really wonderful. Like, this is the first place I've raised money where we have the concept of sustainers, you know, because it's somewhat unique to public media. And it's amazing to me when you see the numbers month after month, and we're kind of like drilling down and looking at everything, to see the amount of money in the pipeline just from sustainers is very inspiring. I mean, like, generally on a monthly basis, we have about $3 million in the pipeline from sustainer revenue alone that we know is going to be coming in that year. So it's a really good way of building the relationship with the donor. We see a sustainer as being like how we would treat a mid-level donor. So we think of our major gift donors, and then a sustainer is someone who has made a commitment similar to a major gift donor. They're continuing with us. So we're thrilled to be seeing that number on the increase.
Questions for Bert? No? All right.
If there are no questions for Bert, I would just remind our board of what we have talked about in the last 2 years about board member contributions. Obviously, we value your time, we value your talent, but we also value your financial contribution because it really helps us when we approach foundation. You all know that. And it's not a matter of a specific contribution. It's a matter of doing what you can so that we can say our entire board is engaged and financially supporting Georgia Public Broadcasting. So thank you in advance. If you haven't made your contribution this year, I would urge you to make that consideration. And if you have, thank you very, very much.
And thank you, Craig, because you have. Thank you very much. And the thing I would add to that too is where you can also be very helpful is if you know folks, if you're yourself on a foundation board and you want to have a conversation with us about that. I know some of you around the table have been very instrumental for that. We're very thankful. So any way that you can help connect us to places where you think we might be able to fund some of our initiatives, that'd be great.
I mean, you know, again, what's so exciting is all that money we try to put back into the community, and that's the fun part of it. Is kind of through the program. All right, Tanya, come on up. Tanya is our VP of Radio, who has had one heck of a run. We are growing our radio systems. We are having enormous success across the state.
We are.
Let's remind folks, we have offices in Savannah, Augusta, Macon, and we have been approached by Columbus at this point. So
And
we
Athens we have.
And Athens. In Athens, we have a great group.
We have a
Great
great
group
group
in
in
Athens.
Yeah.
So it's growing, and we are bringing more public radio to more people. You noticed that we have been invited down to Valdosta State to add programming to their radio. That was an invitation by them. So we will grow even greater audiences down in that area of the state.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the audience growth. First, it's radio, so I have no fancy pictures. Secondly, on the inside, I am just as enthusiastic as Bert is. However, I'm one of the 4 or 5 people that can run an audio board in this building. So I was the board operator for the RNC convention coverage last night till midnight. So yeah, it was fun. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. So let's talk about audience first. As Taya said, we have a number of stations. We're currently on the air on 18 stations around the state. And we have bureaus that actually produce local content in Macon, Savannah, Athens, and Augusta as well. And occasionally out of Milledgeville as well. We have an arrangement with the college and university there. And so I wanted to share with you our numbers because it's been a while since I've shared them. Looking at our network stations, that's everything except for Atlanta, everything except for 88.5. In the fall of 2013, first let me define a couple terms. Average quarter hour. You got the definition back there? Average quarter hour person?
It's been 30 years ago.
Oh, give him a break. Why don't you give Terry a break on that?
I'm just kidding. I just had to call you out. So average quarter hour persons is like unique visitors, the number of people that listen for at least 5 minutes during a quarter hour, the unique number of people that do that. So average quarter hour persons For fall of 2013, and because most of our network stations, the non-Atlanta ones, are on 2 book diaries a year, so we only get data for the fall and for the spring. We have to look over a long span. So fall of 2013, we had 7,700 people, average quarter hour, listening to our radio stations across the state. Fall of 2015, that went to 11,400. So we had a 48% increase in average quarter hour over the last 2 years, which is pretty impressive. Our weekly QM, that's the total number of unique listeners that we have over a week, was 198,100 in 2013. Fall of 2015, it was 216,300, so that was a 9% increase for weekly QM. If we look at 88.5 here in Atlanta, the numbers are really impressive. We went fall of 2013, which would have been before we launched that station. That was when Georgia State students were programming it all day. Their average quarter hour persons were 900, and now in the fall of 2015, we're up to 2,000 for average quarter hours. That's a 122% increase in 2 years. In the 2 years we've had the station. Weekly QM went from 66,600 listeners in the fall of 2013 to 110,000 listeners in the fall of 2015, so that's a 44% increase. And just to give you one more number to think about on that, the most recent books that we've had in the spring of 2016, our numbers have been more like 125, 130,000 for weekly QM, so it's even up from that 110,000 that was the fall. The fall gain that we had on 88.5 from fall of 2014, which was our first fall that we were programming the station during the daytime hours, to fall of 2015 was the highest weekly QM gain of any public radio station in the country. So that's pretty cool. Any questions about the numbers?
Let's say that again.
Sure. So from fall of 2014 to fall of 2015, 88.5 had the biggest gain as a percentage of weekly QM listeners of any public radio station in the entire country.
So what do you think is driving that? I mean, is there a particular segment that's
It's the programming that we offer.
Yeah.
The programming.
It's the programming, and as we said when we talked with you before, and you were in that conversation, that we started at a base level with an audience that was expecting one type of programming, and then when we switched over in June of 2014, we knew that our trend was going up, and it just continues to go up. So our trend lines on all of our listening numbers are going up, which is great.
It's a very strong showing, and it will continue to be so.
It is. And interestingly, if you break down on 88.5, our middays are really powerful. They are doing really, really well, and that's because we came on the air with that news talk information in the middle of the day. Programs like Here Now and The Takeaway and On Point with Tom Ashbrook, really, really good performers for us.
Have any of you heard the program with Tom Ashbrook? Mm-hmm. It is, if you're in your car near a radio at 10 a.m., I highly recommend you listen to it. It's extraordinary. But you have to listen over time to him, because what you'll notice, and he's doing this more and more, he threads some of the most interesting subjects. Okay, I'm not talking about the big news of the day. But over the course of a week, he'll take an issue that seemingly to me is so hard to do on radio and do it brilliantly. Sometimes philosophical issues, and it's fascinating. And he didn't used to do that, and he's doing it more and more. And I think it's the best of what public media is, about really making us think about our lives, our families, our what the way we see the world. It's been, I should have written some examples here, but I highly recommend it.
Well, it's resonating with our listeners. When we first put that program on the air, we were so excited because he takes listener calls, and we would hear, oh, there's somebody calling from Marietta. That's our listener. This is so exciting. And then we got 4 or 5 of them, and we're like, this would make a really good promotion campaign. We should pull these clips of listeners from Atlanta calling On Point. And now we have a running total. We have about 110 clips we can pull, which we haven't gotten around to pulling yet. But that just shows exactly, how popular it is. I think for me, one of the moments was he was doing something on World Cup soccer coverage, and there was a 13-year-old from the Atlanta area who called the show and gave analysis because he's a huge soccer fan, and Tom let him talk for a couple of minutes. he was a huge soccer fan, and at the end of it, Tom said, well, you can come back anytime we're talking about soccer. So it was really, really cute. A couple of other highlights.
Just
Yeah.
a quick question. Do we know about demos in radio? I mean, do we have any idea of who our listeners are? age-wise and
We
this?
have a much better idea for Atlanta than we do for network because we don't buy that package of data for network. So our demo for Atlanta, and I'm just going to be pulling rough,
Right,
you
yeah,
know,
just was curious.
off the top of my head. It is older. If you look at the chunk of listeners where we have the highest key, it's going to be in the 44 to 55 kind of range. So it kind of peaks up in there and then goes down. We have about 75% of our listeners are white. The rest,
That's typical of public radio.
yeah, that's actually, I think our minority audience, our Black and our Hispanic audience is actually a little higher than some other public radio stations, many other public radio stations. So it kind of trends with what we see nationwide for public radio, which is largely white, largely in that 40, 50, up to 60 age range, and largely well-educated. Now, different programs, if you break it down,
Is that the same
It's actually better
for,
than
oh, it's much better.
Much better demo than television.
Is that the case for like Ira Glass's show?
No, so I call This American Life Ira Glass's show.
Yeah.
That's like a gateway drug. That's like how people get into public radio as listeners. You know, that one and Radio Lab, if you've heard Radio Lab, that's a total gateway. I mean, our audience skews much lower on those programs, much lower. Now, interestingly, the challenge for us as a business is that they're often not consuming it on the radio, because when I speak with college classes, which I do all the time, I say, what do you listen to? Fresh Air, Radio Lab, This American Life. How do you listen to it? Podcasts. So there you go.
This is the great challenge for us. And how do we maintain, and this is not just for us, this is for everyone in the media, how do you maintain your commitment from your audience when they go through podcasts? Now, right now we're doing pretty well, because we do a lot, and we're changing the way we reach people, we're changing the way our commitment to our listeners and viewers are, but it is a challenge.
It is a challenge, and I think it's important to remember, though, that even though podcasts are really hot, and I'm a huge podcast consumer myself, that is a micro slice compared to the people that hear us over the air right now. Now, those two graphs are going to change, and more people are going to be listening on streams and podcasts, but right now it is just a tiny fraction of the audio listening. And even if you look in the research that talks about people who consume stuff by stream, by like online stream, or on an app, or on a podcast, most of that listening is music. Most of that listening is not spoken word at this point. Now, the people who are into podcats, they are there. I mean, they are hardcore into their podcasts, and they can listen all the ones they tell you, and they listen a lot. But as a fraction of the larger pie of people that are listening to audio, it's a very small fraction right now. So, just a couple of highlights from the past year. NPR did this thing called Spark, and if you've listened at any length, you might have heard a bazillion and one promos for Morning Edition over a 6-month frame, and then a bazillion and one promos for All Things Considered over a 6-month frame. And what this is, the president at NPR, basically said, let's go back to our basics and let's do optimized scheduling of promos. So we had to do 100 promos a week for those shows, and it's resulted in incredible audience growth nationwide. Interestingly, for the All Things Considered Spark effort, and NPR has tracked all this, our station in Savannah had a 263% increase in All Things Considered listening as a result of the Spark. That was the highest increase of any station in the country. So that's 263%
Those are our numbers, those are
increase.
NPR numbers.
That's NPR numbers. They're pulling that data. So I think that's incredible. How much of that is the promos? How much of that is the fact that we've really, when we rebooted our Savannah station 2 years ago, we really invested a lot of time and effort into hyper-localizing it, but regardless, 263% is an incredible increase in listening.
And we have a great team.
We have a fantastic community.
I mean, we also have great outreach in Savannah, we have a great team, and it's a wonderful market.
So using that example in Savannah,
Yeah.
how is that advantageous to us, that increase in volume? How do we monetize that? How do we
Right.
make that relevant for GPTC?
That might be a better question for our development guy, but I will say that let me just preface it by saying we have what's called a P1 in radio data, and that's a really loyal audience member. That's somebody who listens to your station more than they listen to any other station. And as soon as we can pivot people and get them in more of those average quarter hours, have them tuning in more often during the day and more often over a week, they tip into that P1 loyal category, and loyalty translates into dollars in terms of giving.
Yeah, and I would also say that like, if you think of a normal, an average nonprofit organization, their acquisition is generally through direct mail or some other form of, sending out letters and asking people to make a gift. Our version of direct mail or acquisition is pledge. And so when we go into a pledge drive on radio, having those loyal listeners who, on the national level, do translate over into donors, that gets them into our funnel and it gives us the opportunity to begin moving them up the loyalty ladder. So whether we bring them in as a first-time giver and then turn them into a sustainer or a major gift donor. So the more we have to pull from, the bigger the pool is, the better the opportunity is.
I will say, Craig, that we have not done as good of a job as I wish we had done in tapping into those that will give money not outside of the pledge environment in the Savannah area and the coast. And we consciously did not do this. Part of where this is so great is that we spent how much money on the tower, Anthony, down there?
In Savannah,
Yeah.
last year, we were close to about $80,000.
Right, we had, the darn tower kept getting hit by lightning, you recall. The third time we said enough, and we got something that was more, less likely to get hit by lightning. But it also increased and gave us a better signal. So one way you don't think of as direct, but getting a better signal, getting a stronger signal, we made that investment, we're beginning to see some of the results of that. So we have to, and we will ask you if you know anyone in Savannah or the coast area that we can engage with. We have not quite done as much as I think we can. It's an area that we can continue to grow and be of more service to that community too.
So I went to the Georgia Municipal Association meeting in Savannah and had dinner with the new mayor and told him I was on the GPP board. He was aware and wanted to know more about what
Okay,
we're
good.
doing.
Okay.
So
I will go meet with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Character.
I hear. I'll take you with me. But things like that, just awareness is good, but it's a good question. And we will take any suggestions that you have for how we might do that. Because we continue to think it's a very healthy market for us.
One of the things that our teams in Savannah and Macon particularly have done a lot with over the last year and a half is engagement opportunities in the community. So we launched 2 initiatives in Macon and Savannah called Issues and Ales, which who doesn't want to get together and drink good beer and craft beer and talk about important issues. So we've been holding those. We had one in Savannah at a brewery, I think it was Southbound Brewery that we did it at, where we talked about, we had a whole panel that talked about the impact of tourism in Savannah and some of the challenges that Savannah faces when it comes to tourism and the threat of Airbnb and all those kinds of things. So it's kind of a different way of reaching people. It's not the super formal town hall meeting kind of thing. It's really just we're going to get some smart people together. We're going to talk about some really interesting issues while we're all enjoying, a good craft beer and some good food, or if you're at a brewery, pretzels, because they can't have food. So we've done a couple of those so far. The first one that we did in Macon was on what it means to be a Southerner, and we touched on the Confederate flag. We talked about guns. We hit all those big points on Southern life. We've also been doing a lot of live remotes. We've sort of scaled out our technology so that we can take our shows live, particularly our daily talk show on Second Thought with Celeste Headley, but also Bill Maggott's Political Rewind. We've done those shows live from ACTFest, the Savannah Stopover Festival, Savannah Music Festival. Bill, for his Two-Way Street program, has started a collaboration with the Carter Center, so it's sort of like conversations with really interesting people at the Carter Center with a live
Carter
audience.
Center invited us.
Yep.
To do this. So he's done 3.
We did Sebastian Younger, we did a guy that, we've done 3 or 4 of them now. Yeah. And then just 2 Fridays ago, we did a live remote from the CDC for their 70th anniversary, and we had Tom Frieden and other CDC folks on talking about the history of the CDC, talking about some of the challenges that they face when it comes to funding and things like that, and we did that in front of several hundred people in the audience at the CDC, which was really a really great conversation. So. Also, in terms of engagement, we have and we'll see if we can maybe distribute the link to you. We posted something yesterday that we're super excited about, really, really excited about. We had 2 reporters, one based in Atlanta and one based in Macon, who went to Southwest Georgia to tell the story of about 20 women that in 1963 were 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, and they tried to integrate a movie theater, and they were arrested and taken about maybe 45 minutes away from where their homes were, and they were held in a stockade for 2 months. 2 months with very little food, very little supplies or anything. So we're talking, people that aren't yet teenagers and then young teenage girls. And their story is largely unknown. So we sent a team down there, and they took some of the women who are still alive with them, and they did a story that aired on radio, and they did a video. And as of this morning, I checked it because we just put it up yesterday on social media, and the response has been insane. We've had 95,000 views of our 7-minute video. We've had 5,000 shares on Facebook. That's a huge number of shares. This was not a promoted post on Facebook. This was just people who saw it, loved it, shared it, and 199 comments. That was as
The numbers are extraordinary.
Those numbers are
Something you just put up.
incredible.
It also shows the initiative. This is a story I never heard of. This is a group of kids that were working for SNCC. Not working for it, but they were
attending SNCC meetings and getting involved in the movement.
Getting involved in trying to integrate. And they were just rounded up at the protest and taken. Their parents didn't know where they were, and they were taken to this old stockade and locked in there for 45 days.
Yeah.
And nobody knew about it.
Parents didn't know where they were.
The
Or
local
somebody-
dog catcher snuck them in food.
Tell me, what town did you say that was?
It was down near Americus, down in that area. The dog catcher snuck them in food. Eventually, a photographer who SNCC had hired to do a bunch of work was able to kind of sneak in and take photos of them so their parents knew where they were. And then they were released, and the parents all got a bill for the daily rent for when they were in the stockade. So it's a really important story to tell. Our 2 reporters, Bradley George, who hosts Morning Edition here in town, and Grant Blankenship, who's our all-platform journalist in Macon, did it as a tag team, and they did a fantastic job with it. So much so that NPR has some interest in it, so we're talking with them about possibly having it air nationally. Speaking of which, we've had, I didn't pull the full number, but we've had more than 100 pieces or so air nationally on NPR and Marketplace, some of the other shows over the within the last year, which is really great. And one of them won a really prestigious national award. The Public Radio News Directors Association has a category. They have an awards competition. This is national, and all of the categories are competitive, but the one that is most competitive is the one that is a story that aired nationally. So you're up against everybody in the country that wants to enter that. And Bradley George, our morning host here in Atlanta, won 2nd place in that competition for a piece that he did on infant mortality in the Black community in South Georgia, which was the numbers are staggering and frightening. He did a really nice piece that aired on the Takeaway, and that won a national award.
Talk about Grant for a minute, and what an interesting hire that is.
So Grant Blankenship in Macon, we took an unusual approach for public radio stations, and we hired a newspaper photographer to be a reporter. And we have the collaboration making with Mercer University, the Center for Collaborative Journalism, and the Telegraph. And he was a Telegraph reporter who really took a liking to what we were doing in radio and tried very hard to do radio pieces when he could. So we hired him on, and it's been an incredible, incredible hire because he has a great sense of audio and storytelling, and he's got really good video and still photography chops. I mean, he's doing some amazing photography, which you don't typically see at a station, radio station. You don't usually get amazing photography, and yet we do. So he's doing a couple of things. In addition to the news reporting that he's doing, like the Stockade Girls story, he's now coordinating our GPD music effort. And so what that is we are highlighting musicians and bands that are from Georgia that are up and coming and really interesting. And he's helped us create a collaboration with Capricorn Studios in Macon, which is where a lot of great music came out of, and it had fallen into disrepair. Mercer University has now bought it, and they're rehabbing it. It's not rehabbed yet, so it's like a shell of itself, which is a great place to shoot a DIY music video. So he's bringing bands in there, and he's doing shoots there where he'll interview the musician, and then they'll play. So it's just a very intimate kind of thing that's done for video and audio. And then he's also setting up pop-up concerts around Macon.
Patty, he probably knows Lisa Love with the state.
Because we're like this with Lisa.
In fact, we did a whole project with Lisa.
Yeah.
You want to tell Craig what that was? It was, the music was the one with Celeste where it was talking about all the music. They coordinated.
Georgia Music Playlist.
Georgia Music.
So on second thought, we have the Georgia Playlist, which is we invite musicians. The rules are we invite a musician that has a connection to Georgia, and we say you get to tell us what your playlist is. Pick 2 to 3 songs that are not your songs that really mean Georgia to you. And so we do that right.
It has to be by a Georgian or about Georgia.
Yeah, it has to be by a Georgian or about Georgia. And so that's one of the most popular playlists that we have on our radio product. A lot of people are really interested in, knowing what other people think is the really cool stuff to listen to. So.
Can you also talk about the new hire from Celeste Show? Isn't it on Celeste Show, the new GSU hire?
I can do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It's on
So,
your list.
education, of course, is at the core of what GPD does, and we've really ramped up our internship program. In our newsroom, this summer we had 8 interns, college interns, working in our newsroom, including 2 from the University of Brighton in the UK, who came to us through Kennesaw because they were doing a study abroad with them. And so immediately we sent them to the Trump rally at the Fox because, welcome to America, make it great again. And they got to cover the Trump rally, which they found fascinating. But in general, we've had somewhere between 5 and 7 interns a semester. And we were super excited. We had a really fantastic intern that came to us from Georgia State out of our collaboration with Georgia State with 88.5. And he interned for us and kind of blew us away as an intern. So when we had a staff member that went on leave, we had to fill it with a temporary person. We hired him. He blew us away in that. And so we offered him a full-time position, and he's now on full-time with us, just 1 year after he interned with us. He graduated in December. He's now a full-time producer. He's going to be producing Morning Edition for 88.5, which is great, which is really, really exciting. We've added a couple new programs on the radio signal. We've got Freakonomics. Anybody familiar with Freakonomics, the book? There's a radio version of that. So we're in Freakonomics. We're in the New Yorker Radio Hour. The New Yorker magazine came out with the Radio Hour. And we have a new investigative program called Reveal that has already won. It launched a year ago. It already won like tons of really prestigious awards in this past awards round. And investigative journalism is going away in a lot of media outlets. So it's great to have a national team that's working on investigative journalism. One final thing to tell you about. Celeste Headley's talk show, on second thought. You guys have hopefully heard the show. You hopefully know what a great thing she brings to the air. About a year ago, she was invited to go to Savannah and speak for the TEDx Creative Coast. And she gave a speech on how to have a conversation. And it was a really interesting speech. TED, it's like 17 minutes or whatever it is. She gave the speech. It sat there, people viewed it. At some points along the way, TED, the big TED, decided that they would feature it on the front of their, TED page. And it's now at 4.5 million views. So much so that they did a TED Summit in Canada just about a month ago, and they chose their 100 most influential TED talkers, and they asked Celeste to come up and be one of those 100 most influential TED talkers. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And she's currently writing a book based on the experience as well, so it's a great testament to Celeste and also really good for us, right? Because everything she does, she's identified as our daily talk show host. So.
Well, Tanya, you may have worked late last night, but you certainly know it.
Thank you. I'm gonna work late again tonight. We'll see how I am tomorrow.
We'll reconvene for you.
Oh, that's nice.
All right, we have a couple more presentations. Do you want to give me lunch?
Sure, why don't we take a quick break? And first, I want to welcome Helen on lunch. No, that's quite all right. We understand, but we're delighted that you're